So there is a right-wing witch hunt against Gavin Newsom simply because he implemented the restrictive lockdowns, which he should have done in the first place to try to keep Californians safe. And so now these people insist on recalling him from his seat. And so there is many names, and you have to get as many names as you can to a certain number to be considered to recall political officials that are governors. So California Governor Gavin Newsom readies for recall election, fueled by the backlash to pandemic restrictions. This is by Crystal Hayes in USA Today. And he basically has been on the news more recent about how they are trying to recall him from his seat. And Gavin Newsom isn't new to the criticism or the attempts to remove him from his office seat. So Republicans have crafted recall efforts 5 times in the 2 years that he's led the state. Okay, and so, but after being hailed as one of the nation's most formidable leaders in the fight against COVID-19, the 6th attempt, and this is the 6th attempt to recall Gavin Newsom, looks like it will almost certainly lead to a historic recall election, something Newsom himself acknowledges could possibly be happening very soon. So the reality is it looks like it's going to be on the ballot. And so we're ready to go, Newsom said of the recall effort at the news conference on Tuesday. So he says that we will fight it and we'll defeat it. And so the well-funded effort is prompted by and determined groups like the Republicans, including big names like Newt Gingrich, Mike Huckabee. It's fueled in part by the backlash to Newsom's strict coronavirus measures that angered some Californians and has gained momentum thanks to a lengthening recall process due to the pandemic. And so you have a lot of on various social media sites, and I'm adding this in here. There are conspiracy theorists who blame Newsom for the homelessness, which was already here before Newsom took office. There are people who were blaming Newsom for his handling of the virus, which already that was happening, and had Trump had have been honest in the beginning and not have misled and put out so much misinformation, maybe the grim numbers of the people that had passed away wouldn't have occurred in rapid pace as it did. And Gavin Newsom wouldn't have to put in any restrictive lockdowns hadn't it have been so many people infected and the contagion was allowed to spread because the leader in chief, who used to be the president, failed and didn't tell anyone when he knew early on that back in December before 2020, December of 2020, 2019, he knew that there was this horrible virus that was coming, and he didn't mention anything. He kept quiet. And most of his times that when he went to the podium, he would always come to the podium with no mask on. And this was Trump that was doing this. and he ended up, him and his whole, most of his immediate family members contracted COVID. He was holding a lot of meetings, a lot of rallies, despite the warnings. And so that sent mixed messages. So going back to this article, it says those elements could create a perfect storm, posing dire consequences for the high profile Democrats. So we know what happened with the past election. A lot of people feel like it was stolen from them. This is yet but another effort to try to clean out some of the political seats that are for cities and replace those seats with Republican governors because they're angry because Trump did not win the election. So, like Gavin is saying, there's the Proud Boys behind this, there's some of the right wing conspiracy theories that have been floating around, and a lot of these people who are right wing witch hunters. And so that is the reason why this has been happening. And so it goes on to say that they have viewed, this has been viewed as a potential presidential contender. Anybody that they see as a Democrat, they're trying to basically wipe them away from those seats. And so a monolith review will begin on Wednesday to check what organizers say is more than 2 million signatures backing this effort. So only about 1.5 million are needed to trigger a recall. And so that's the numbers that they're looking for in order to go ahead with all of this. So it's really a rare experience for governors to face recall elections, said Ken Miller. But look what we're in. You know, we had the Capitol, January 6th Capitol building insurrection, and then the election that didn't happen like they wanted. They as in these right-wing witch hunters and conspiracy theorists and these hate groups and these right-wing hateful people who basically want to clear everything out, clear all the Democrats out, and make it a right-wing circus. So it's really a rare experience, they say, for the governors to face recalls. So the state and local government, this was Ken Miller, the professor at a Claremont and McKenna College in California, says this. So normally you would think that California, that Gavin Newsom shouldn't have to worry about facing the voters, but Miller said that that isn't the case this time with a large state known nationally as being the deep blue, but which has regions of strong conservative voters as well. And it's basically saying what I'm saying, but it's saying it in a nicer form, or at least a more conservative, a more passive form. So I'm basically putting it out there as I see who these people are. They're basically right-wing conspirators and people that are with Proud Boys, people that are right-wing uprisers and insurrectionists, people who agreed with the people who were storming the Capitol. If not, they were a part of it themselves. People who are in right-wing extremist groups, and that is who this is. And so basically this story continues. So it says, but Miller said that that isn't the case. So they know what's going on. So Newsom could see an abrupt end to his political ambition due to a number of factors, including peculiar rules in a recall race as well. And so while successful recall efforts are incredibly rare, attempts are not. So the effort against Newsom, for instance, is the sixth attempt that has him removed, to have him removed from office, especially now that Trump didn't get elected another 4 years. So that's why they're trying to push for this. Only 4 times in U.S. history has a recall effort against a governor garnered enough signatures to force an election. So, and only 2 governors throughout history have been removed from office in a recall election. one in North Dakota in 1921 and the other in 2003 in California. Governor Gray Davis was removed from the office and replaced by a movie star, which is Arnold Schwarzenegger, as we know. He used to be the governor of California. So COVID-19, the strict policies impacting Californians has been the major factor in the effort in targeting Newsom. Now, most of the people who wanted to reopen things during the middle of the pandemic, or like mid-swing, when so many people were getting infected and there were so many deaths, was primarily people who were like upscale business owners. They were complaining. Then you had people who they weren't in danger of getting evicted from anywhere. They were complaining. They weren't able to spend their money and they weren't able to do their high-end businesses and to conduct businesses and have poor, low-income people working for them for peanuts and kibbles and bits. That's basically what that was. They were doing most of the complaining, and they were also doing most of the non-mask wearing, and that's why we also seen the spread was happening exponentially. So a complete 180 from the public admiration for the governor early in the pandemic. Okay, so basically they just want him out, and this is what this group is trying to do, and they're trying to get the signatures, which they've gotten them together. So now it's actually making headlines, and it's on the news and on social media everywhere. He even had to explain himself in a brief statement on the news. So he was praised for being ahead of the rest of the country and issuing the first stay-at-home orders and managing to keep infections low at the beginning of the pandemic. But when other states were seeing an explosion of cases happening, but the pandemic wore on and fatigue grew, and governors in other states, including Colorado and Michigan, have faced recall efforts in the aftermath of the pandemic, but they haven't seen the same momentum as factors working against Newsom. So the California has one of the only precedents in removing a sitting governor. So Miller said an effort in California. The effort grew here because of several of the factors notable. The judge extending the period of the proponents that had signatures by 4 months from November to March due to the pandemic, and an additional time allowed for groups to get more organized to raise money. And so the effort garnered more attention and supporters as Newsom drew headlines for public flubs, including him attending a dinner party. So that worked against him at the French Laundry, which when he's told people, so that's probably what they were looking at, and that's probably what will go against him more. They'll focus on that, because this was when he was saying that people couldn't go into restaurants and they had everybody on lockdown and there was no indoor dining, but yet himself, he was indoor dining. So one of the world's most exclusive restaurants at the time, when he was discouraging Californians from traveling to see family members on the holidays. Support continued to grow as the state saw an alarming spike in cases over the winter, notably in Los Angeles, even with Newsom's strict safety measures. So it only took off because the public sentiment turning against Newsom as the pandemic were on the people who were frustrated. So Miller said of the recall effort, noting that the various policies of school closures, and that was another big issue. Some people wanted schools to be open, but they were closed down for a elongated period of time until they'd seen the virus numbers go down or dip down. And now they've dipped down really low, and so now they're reversing all of these lockdowns, where they're opening businesses, they're opening schools, they're trying to open up some dining, indoor dining. And this comes at a time right when Newsom is looking at facing a recall. So the people on the receiving end of those government policies sort of formed a movement that gained enough strength to get this thing on this ballot. And so it looks like it's going to do just that. The drive originally started more than a year ago, February 2020, before Newsom imposed the closures. Now, this was before all of the closures. And so this was when um, it says to limit the spread of the COVID-19. So proponents justified a recall based on the governor's position on a number of political issues, including taxes on immigration. It was conducted through amid frustration over pandemic-related shutdowns. So he mismanaged this from day one. Recall senior advisor Randy Economy, so who said that he was confident that they had enough of the signatures to trigger a recall. So it is a draconian, his draconian policies. He's locked 40 million of us under house arrest for nearly a year, and it was his way or his highway. And so it was a mess. So I believe in this way that it is a two way um, argument, and it's a two way issue. So it's not only some of the faults of Gavin Newsom, it also, you cannot escape the fact that Trump did not get elected, and that most of these people are right-wing conspiracists. The most of the people who are driving this, their purpose is not so much just the lockdowns in and of itself. It's because their leader, their former leader in chief, did not get reelected, and also when he was in office, he wasn't that crazy about um, Gavin Newsom either, because he made a lot of comments that were against him. So proponents call for Newsom to be removed from the office based on his actions to implement laws they say harm California citizens, according to the petition circulated to voters. So they also object to his moratorium. There we go, right there. They did not like the moratorium on executions of death row inmates, and his positions on tax matters and water rationing and parental rights as well. And so there's a lot of things that they feel that they were against that he was for. I don't believe that this is going to yet be over with, and there's going to be some problems with it. So we'll see what happens. We can only wait and see how this turns out. So the review of signatures collected to recall Newsom will begin Wednesday, but the process is expected to be a lengthy one, like I said, with an election not expected before the fall. So organizers of a recall effort will turn in the petition signatures to the California Secretary of State's office, so which is headed to Shirley Weber, a former Democratic legislator Newsom appointed in December. So election officials will have until April the 29th to verify the authenticity and notify the Secretary of State with the results. So elections officials must verify at least 1,495,709 registered voters that have signed the recall petitions. So that's 12% of the 12,464,235 votes cast in 2018 election that Newsom's won. He captured almost 62% of the vote. Proponents projected that a special election for the recall would be held October or November if enough signatures are validated. But even if the recall election is approved, experts say they expect Newsom and his allies will attempt to stall, hoping the pandemic will have subsided and the state's mandates will have relaxed. Already schools are starting to reopen. along with theme parks and outdoor sports, which that's what people wanted in the beginning. It's what they were crying about. Um, they will probably try to stretch out the process, Miller said, noting that all the litigations that have happened during the 2003 recall process in the state. So there's still enough uncertainty on some of these rules that I can imagine there will be attempts to kind of slow things down. And I think from Newsom's standpoint, the later this happens, the better it happens. So Dan Strother, a Democratic media consultant in California whose clients include governors, mayors across the U.S., said they expect Newsom to pull through this effort, noting that how different the state and the rest of the country will likely look in a few months as more vaccinations are administered to people. It's a bad time in America, but it's getting better, he said. We're getting shots and things are beginning to open up in 3 months from now. It's going to be a different world. So if the effort makes it to the ballot, the voters would be asked two questions. Do they want to recall Newsom, yes or no? And if more than 50% of the voters say yes, who should replace him is going to be the big question. But there is no limit on the number of candidates who can run to replace an official on a recall ballot. And whoever gets the most votes wins that on that ballot, even without a majority. So it's entirely possible that someone could be elected in the recall while winning less than half the votes, but that's what happens in the state. That's happened in the state in 2003. Governor Davis was recalled by 55% of the voters, and more than 100 people ran to replace him. And Schwarzenegger managed to win by 48.6% of the support. So Newsom paints recall as an effort by extremists QAnon. That's another group who is a right-wing extremist. So Newsom largely brushed off the recall effort for months, but over the last 2 weeks, he launched a full-throttle effort against it, including everything from the fundraising campaign, national media tour, advertisements, to having prominent progressive Democrats like Senators Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren weigh in on it or against it. And so when you get Warren and Bernie supporting him, that makes it far less likely that a progressives will get in the race as an option to him. So Struthers said, I thought that this was very, very important that they did that. And so Governor is not only battling against those that leading this effort for him to be removed, but he's also attempting to persuade other Democrats entering the race should a recall election be held later this year, a tempting opportunity in the state that has or sees celebrities and political outsiders rise to national leaders, a group that includes Ronald Reagan. And so join at Warren, add your name to say you oppose the far-right Republican recall in California. Okay, so use this link, and so this is a link that can be used as well. So this is like what I say, right-wing conspiracists doing this. So some see a potential Democratic contender or a proponent conservative outsider, possibly even a celebrity, as the biggest threat to Newsom's uh, Schwarzenegger joining the race in 2003 generated worldwide headlines. So Newsom has framed the campaign in a public appearance and in an advertisement of partisan attack led by the far-right extremist groups QAnon and Proud Boys and the Three Percenters as well. So this is a sideshow, he said on Tuesday. This is a circus, which I do believe it is. I will say I do believe it is these groups that are really doing most of the targeting. So Struthers said that it's a smart tactic in the deep blue state that elected Biden with a 64% of the voted compared to Trump 34%. No Republican has won a statewide election since 2006. So if Gavin, I don't make this a referendum on Gavin, it will make a referendum on Trump and Trump Republicans, he said. So Newsom has made a point to target members of the recall effort and frame the battle as one of the state's values, not politics. And so as soon as you make the effort to replace Gavin and recall Gavin and about Trump Republicans, Trevor said, it's no longer about COVID response in schools and openings, etc. You saw how well loved Trump is in California. I'd hang Trump around their necks. And so Economy mocked Newsom, linking the group to extremists, and urged Americans to stay tuned to what comes next in this effort. So this is going to be the greatest political campaign in history, America, he said. So pull up a seat, America, and just watch exactly how democracy really works here and when the citizens take over, take control of their destiny. So that's pretty much what's going on. I believe that is an effort for these groups to try to swipe him away out of his seats. I feel like what they want to do is they want to make all of the other people, like governors and mayors, Republicans, because they couldn't get Trump another 4 years, and they're still um, mad about it. And so you have these groups, like you said, the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys, and QAnon, and some of the other conspiracy groups, and people blaming Gavin. But what works against him in some ways is that when you have him locking people down and telling people that they're doing it for the safety and the stay-at-home orders, when he's in a restaurant and he's having dinner and he's doing the indoor dining when it was told to many, many millions of people not to do indoor dining. And so I know they're using everything, pulling everything they can to try to work against him. I don't think any political leaders are perfect, not by a long shot, but some do a lot more damage than others in ways that work against people. The thing is that how many people were in the restaurant when he was dining? And so when he did say that he wanted people to not stop the indoor dining, he didn't want a whole lot of people in there doing the dining. So I don't know if he did do the dining with a lot of people in there. That might not look good on his part at all, especially if they're looking to recall him. But the other thing is too, you gotta also factor in, that's why I think it's a two-way street, that these people are mad because Trump did not win the election, and these are right-wing extremists. They are the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys, and the QAnon groups that really are trying to change the seats, the faces of the seats, because of what happened in that last election. We had the Capitol incident on January the 6th, and that showed the anger and the frustration that was out there. And so that anger is still there, and so they're doing everything. Anybody makes any slip up or does anything against what these people's beliefs are, they're going to try to see them out of these seats. And so I believe that has a lot to do with it. And yes, I'm still calling this a right-wing witch hunt. Thanks for listening.